Everyone, welcome to part 2 of factoring quadratic equations. In this video, I'm going to go over factoring quadratic equations when a does not equal 1. Okay, so in part 1, we factored a quadratic equation when a didn't equal 1 right off the bat, but there was a greatest common factor, and that did kind of turn a into 1. So looking at this one, it's in standard form already, but if you notice, there is no greatest common factor between 2, 7, and 3. So I just start with it like this. So I just say A is 2, B is 7, and C is 3. Okay, so I'm going to do that first and third one together. Factors of that, 2 times 3 is 6. That add to that middle number, 7. So what two numbers multiply to get 6 and add to get 7? 6 times 1 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So the next step would be to say x plus 6 times x plus 1 equals 0. Now, when a equals 1, you'd be done at this step. But because a didn't equal 1, we're not done. Because we did this little shortcut here. We did 2 times 3 to the back. So the caveat for when a does not equal 1 is you need to now multiply that out. Divide that out. It's kind of like undoing it. We had to multiply it to the back to figure out the factors. Now I'm going to undo it. If it makes a whole number, like 6 divided by 2, you just write it down, x plus 3. If it doesn't make a whole number, like 1/2, 1 divided by 2 makes 1/2, you take that and you swing it up front. So you have 2x plus 1 equals 0. And so now you have your final answer. And so you should have like the front number 2, or sometimes if you have a big enough number in front of the x squared, it's two different numbers. Like let's say it was like a 6x squared. You might have like a 2 in one of your factors and a 3 in another, because they'll multiply to get 6x squared. Stuff like that happens, but generally speaking, if you have a number in front of the x squared, if you have a value of a that's not equal to 1, your final answer should have that number in it somewhere. So there it is with this 2 by the x, okay? So if this seems a little confusing, let's move on to the next one, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So here I have 2x plus 3x minus 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 0. It's in standard form. There are no greatest common factors. So I just go a times c. That's negative 10, because 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So what are my factors of negative 10 that add to get 3? That would be 5 and negative 2. So I say x plus 5, x minus 2 equals 0. But because a was not equal to 1, I have to divide out that front number. That front number was 2. And by the front number, I'm talking about this one right here. All right, so 5 over 2 does not make a whole number, so it swings up front. So I say 2x plus 5. This one does make a whole number. 2 divided by 2 cancels. Anything divided by itself is 1, so it's x minus 1. So when things cancel, they don't just completely disappear. They make a 1, all right? So don't forget your equals 0, and that's it for this one. It's completely factored down, okay? Just circle my answer. All right, let's do one more example together. Here, I have 9x squared plus 3x equals 6. Okay, it's not in standard form. I got a minus 6 over. Remember, it has to equal 0. So 9x squared plus 3x minus 6 equals 0. 9, 3, and 6, they all have a greatest common factor of 3. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to divide a 3 out from everything. So I'll put the 3 on the side. And 9x squared divided by 3 is 3x squared. 3x divided by 3 is x. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2, and it equals 0. So now I'm going to take this 3 and that negative 2, and my a times c value is negative 6. My b value, it's like there's a 1 there, is 1, because I have 1x in the middle. So what two numbers multiply to get negative 6 and add to get 1? I know 6 is 3 times 2 and 6 times 1. So 3 times 2, those are 1 apart from one another. So if I say 3 times 2, that'll equal positive 6. I need to equal negative 6. So if I make the 2 negative, that'll multiply to get negative 6, and that'll add to get positive 1. So I say x plus 3, x minus 2 equals 0. And then don't forget about that 3 that we had factored out before. Now I'm still going to go back and I'm going to divide out that front number. This time that front number is a 3. Okay? So I'm going to divide each of these by 3. So my answer is going to say 3 parentheses x plus 1 close parentheses, because 3 divided by 3 makes 1. And then x minus 2 over 3, well, that would swing up front. So 3x minus 2 equals 0. And this is about as complicated as they're going to get when you're factoring. Okay? You have a value, you have a is not equal to 1, and then you also have a greatest common factor. That's as complex as I can make these. Okay? So what I'd like for you to do is, if you're watching this, which of course you're watching this, right? I want you to do these two you-try examples. I'll pause the video and then I'll jump to the answers and I'll quickly explain them. Okay, for this example, there were no greatest common factors, so I multiplied the 5 to the back, and 5 times 6 got me 30. So I did factors of 30 that add to negative 13. Well, that would be negative 10 and negative 3. So I wrote x minus 10 times x minus 3 equals 0. And then I need to divide out my a value now, because I multiplied it back. Now I need to divide it to undo it. Now, 10 divided by 5 got me 2, so x minus 2. And 3 over 5 didn't simplify, so that 5 swung up front and got me 5x minus 3. Okay? So you might be asking yourself, why didn't I divide out the a in the first one, in part 1? Well, the a was 1, so anytime you divide by 1, you just get yourself. So I was just kind of skipping that step because it wasn't going to change anything, all right? But technically you are dividing out that a no matter what it is. So on this one, it equaled 5. So the first step is I needed to subtract 5 to the other side, so it would equal 0. Then I did 2 times negative 5, and so I got negative 10. So my factors of negative 10 that add up to 9 are 10 and negative 1. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. So I said x plus 10 times x minus 1 equals 0. So my front number was 2. There was no greatest common factor on this one either. And by the way, I got a little ahead of myself. 10 divided by 2 got me 5. 1 over 2 didn't simplify, swing it up front. It would equal 0. So if you ever get a fraction, like, this is just me kind of spitballing here. If you ever get a fraction that does simplify, like let's say you get like 6 over 3. No, that's a bad example. 6 over 4. That would equal like 3 over 2. You'd take like the simplified version and you'd swing that number up front. So that maybe I'll do that in another video. So stay tuned for like maybe an unofficial kind of part 3. All right. But that's it for these notes. Just like to say, not every quadratic function factors. If you ever get to a point and you're stuck and you just can't factor it, sometimes it's not factorable and you have to solve it another way. So you would just say does not factor. If all I'm asking for you to do is factor it and it does not factor, that's all the answer is. But that wraps it up. Hope this helped. Goodbye, everyone.